worry about that. So that's two concerns, is that we really don't know what the bypass route is. The third concern I have is in noise mitigation. I don't know what the decibel level or the buzzing sound will be for this high voltage that they're asking for, and I think that we need to know what the decibel levels will be. I'm really concerned, here's another issue, I'm really concerned about the easements. Mr. Wilson talked about buying the easements, but it was my understanding from the contract, and I've read the 130 some odd pages of the contract, it was my understanding that it was Rocky Mountain Power that was going to build the easements for this line. And if Rocky Mountain Power buys the easements, then do they own the easements? And this is the first time that Rocky Mountain Power would have legal right to easements if they are theirs, if they're purchasing them, and I understand there's millions that Rocky Mountain Power is going to pay for the easements. But then what is their legal right once they get the easements? Can they build bigger poles without any more conditional use permits or any other mitigation conditions that the city might put on them? I'm concerned that once Rocky Mountain Power gets their easements, that they will have a legal right to them and they can build anything perhaps they want on them in the future. I feel like that's something we need to know now. Who's purchasing the easements, who's going to own those easements, and then what legal rights do they have on their easement in the future. And then my next final concern is how much pressure or is it Heber Planning Power that you would use eminent domain to condemn those easements? And yet they're going to be sold to Rocky Mountain Power. So who's going to, exercise eminent domain to condemn those easements within our city? Who's going to own the easement? And what can they do with the legal right to those easements in the future? Would they ever have to come back to our city government to build larger and larger transmission lines? Thank you very much.
Okay. My name's Kerry Sigurd. I've been in the valley for 20 years, and I just assumed since they get a Heber Planning Power built, they just hold out. So maybe this is not the right place to ask this, but I don't know another place to ask it. So does Rocky Mountain actually service homes in the valley? Is only Heber Planning Power? If Rocky Mountain is here, is there a map we can see what part they do? And if they're not in the valley, then why are they here affecting all of this stuff? I don't understand the concept. Like I said, maybe this isn't the right place. But if someone could do a 3-minute summary, that's really helpful to me.
Well, I think this is quite good. Put you on the spot.
I believe the first question was whether Rocky Mountain Power had residential home customers within the valley, and the answer is yes.
Where are those primarily?
Predominantly on the north end of the valley, Coyote Lane and north. Does that sound right? So everything from Coyote Lane and north, and then also Wallsburg area. I don't know if you can find that in the valley, but it's in this region. There's other parts of the county that we also serve. And I think the other part of the question is, why are you here? So there are several different types of lines. There are interstate transmission lines, there are intrastate transmission lines, there are regional transmission lines, and there are distribution lines. And so, this project, the one that we've applied for, is for kind of a regional transmission line. These lines connect the regional substations together, and they take power from these interstate transmission lines that were then transformed to a regional transmission voltage, distribute them through, say, a valley, and then in the valley they get transformed again to a lower voltage, to a distribution voltage, where that voltage goes and kind of spiders out, if you will, through the web, kind of out through the community where individual homes are served. So So the line in the application is a transmission line that connects our regional transmission substations together to serve regional distribution substations and also to serve Heber Light Power. Is that 3 minutes?
4 other. Okay, thank you.
Can I ask a quick follow-up question to that? So the area continuing north from Coyote Lane, as that area, almost all of it, right, is currently in the county. As that area builds out, there's quite a bit of vested density up there. Would that all be serviced by Rocky Mountain Power still, all the area that's
It's a complicated question to answer at public hearing. I think the answer is it depends. There are a different answer than it depends.
A lot of that just depends, like Ben said, on annexations and different things like that.
So it depends on whether it's in the city or the county, or is there more to it than that?
That's the basis of it, is if it's in the city or county. We had a long negotiation about 2012 to define our service territory with Rocky Mountain Power. It was lengthy and it was drawn out, and there was a lot of people at the table. And at that point, we set hard and fast, service boundaries, which was Coyote Lane and north stay within Rocky Mountain Power service territory. But as the city grows and annexations take place, at that point that changes. I wouldn't ever want to do it any farther than that. Sure, thank you.
Okay. Who else would like to speak?
Can I just ask a question?
Sure.
I wasn't aware that the city, I guess that would make us the residents, owns Heber Light Power. So what, maybe you go to law school or something, but doesn't that give us some leverage as the taxpayers and the residents here by virtue of being those two things? We own Heber Light Power, and do we need to take over the board or something to change? Because I heard at the County Planning Commission meeting that the Board of Directors, through the consultation of the, whatever the planning committee was called,
Facilities.
said, we cannot pass on to the ratepayers any additional costs beyond a standard construction. And then the county commission, or the planning commission, the discussion was, I'm paraphrasing here, one of the committee members said, okay, so I understand this, if we want to bury it, it's going to cost more, the county can pay for it, and we can, do a bond raise or a referendum or increase the taxes, whatever. At the end of the day, we're all going to pay for it as the end users, and I've heard only every single person making comment wants the lines buried, or at least those portions that are going to be visually impactful. So, that's what I'm here to advocate. I think everybody who has spoken advocates, and so I hope you do that at the end of the day. So, anyway, keep Heber beautiful.
Thank you. You were Richard Getz, is that right?
Yes.
All right, I wanted to make sure I got you right. All right, thank you. Okay, Mr. George, did you want to make another comment?
One comment.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry.
Let's go.
Chris Bernard, I'm from Midway. At the county meeting last week, Mark Hendricks made a really good statement, and that was, instead of treating this project like multiple little projects, it should be looked at as one complete project. So instead of having meetings like this, everyone from the city council with the Heber Power board, everyone should be in the same room, managing the project as a whole. Instead of, it's going to make these guys' job a lot easier. Did Mark Hendricks said that? Did you hear that? I thought it was a great idea. This thing's going to happen one way or another, but we all should be working together to get the solution that we all want, whether it's partly buried, all above the ground, or whatever. Because you guys are making decisions, not really taking into consideration what everyone else is trying to resolve. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, the city elected to bury other lines and the county did above ground.
Yeah, so work together and treat it as a complete project. You know, there's a saying, united, divided we, whatever that saying is.
Divide and conquer.
Yeah. Work it as a complete project, because that's what it is. Because Rocky Mountain Power and Heber Power, you've got to have a budget to do the whole project. Right? When you put it out to bid, are you going to put it out to bid as little sections, or are you going to put it out to bid as an entire project?
You intend on bidding the whole thing now.
Yeah, so it's a complete project. So everyone who has a stake in this should be in this room right now, helping to come up with a good solution. That's my point. I got to go home and cook dinner. Thank you.
Harold, I think that brings up an important question for the Planning Commission. If you don't mind me putting words in your mouth, and that is, what approvals have you received from Midway and Wasatch County, and how do those compare to what's being proposed here in Heber City?
We are in a similar spot with each entity at this point. We met with Wasatch County a week ago with their planning commission, and they asked us to come back on July 11th with a little bit more detail on the substation section of our application with them. And limited to just speaking about that is the way the motion read. In Midway, we met with them in May, and they provided us with a list of things that they would like us to come back to them with at a future time. I guess it was in July at some point in time. We'll go back there again for another meeting with them and take back to them the things that we've been diligently working on to prepare at their request.
Okay, good. It was brought up previously about alternate routes. Is that what either one of those two entities asked for, some alternate routes?
We've been discussing alternate routes throughout this. The portion through Heber, we discussed 3 different routing originally. The first routing was to follow our existing transmission line that we have now, which goes up 2nd South and across 2nd West. There's already an existing 46 kV line there that we talk about following that. We talk about coming in 600 West, and then we also talk about following the bypass route. And basically we've ended up on that routing because that's where we've been directed to go by our political leaders over the past year and a half.
Okay, go ahead.
Just to finish the part, I think, of your question of what are the other jurisdictions asking for. In our original hearing with Wasatch County, they did ask about that. We did report last week on sort of a couple of alternate sections, is probably better to describe rather than full routes, alternate sections of routes. And then Midway City changed their ordinance. It was not addressed at all when we originally moved forward on this project, and then they adopted an ordinance partway through. Not dissimilar to you changing your ordinance partway through. So we're less far along with them. Part of their new ordinance is for new lines or interpretation. They want us to talk about that. So yes, there's some discussion about that, and there are different stages of maturity for each entity.
Okay. We haven't seen any potential alternate routes.
Well, yeah, and so the alternate route in counties, the 600 West was one we looked at more heavily. There are some, for the city, yeah, there are some structures and cell tower that make it difficult doing it on 600 West. through the various meetings that we had, the bypass corridor was discussed. Even at that point, one of the comments that we had today talked about how, DOT saying, now saying that we're not exactly sure where it's going to be. Well, the truth is that in those meetings they said, we're studying various options. We don't know exactly where it's going to be. But if you run it on the north and on the west through the north fields, then you're going to be outside of any area. We don't have the luxury of waiting forever for this road to get sited, and so we sited it in a spot where it would be out of the way. And then, so, going back to alternate sightings, where the south line has to be rebuilt anyway, it only makes sense to follow those existing lines through those sections. We're talking about really small sections of retransmission lines within Heber City itself.
Okay, Mr. Wilson, I have another question for you. So, Heber Planning Power Board, and then the facilities board basically is a smaller subsection of the Heber Planning Power Board. When they gave Heber Planning Power direction as to where the proposed route would be, did they rely on some technical expertise from you guys?
Yes, we were in those meetings, and as they would ask questions of us, we would answer them to the best of our knowledge. Like I said, we've consulted with other outside engineering to look at different things as well. Underground study, feasibility study, or not feasibility, but our low flow studies and different things like that. But yes, they relied on us for direction as far as technical issues.
And routing also, I mean, you probably had preferred routes you wanted to use because it would be more facilitating to what you need to do, right?
The big thing that changed our routing philosophy was, in my mind, was moving the substation side, which we were, directed to do.
We haven't closed the public hearing yet, so if anybody else wants to make another statement, then you're allowed to. If not, then we're going to have Mr. George said he wanted to wrap it up all nice and neat, so he's right on the ball.
All right, I'll try to do this. Thank you very much. So, last week at the County Commission meeting, Jason Norland, who's the head of Heber Planning Power, he said, this is a once-in-a-generation project, and he's very enthusiastic about this, and he's repeated that a couple of times. And so my concern is, when we look back a generation from now, we want to look back and make sure that people remember it not for what it actually achieved rather than what it actually destroyed. And so I think the pivotal point, it is a generational thing. There's going to be, we have to have power. I've never disputed that. But I think we're making a mistake if we don't look harder at this issue of removing some of the visibility of this. Not much can be done about Highway 40. We'll probably get used to that. But I think the future stuff, and it goes on from Midway, and we need to integrate these designs all at once. But I don't want to be 10 years from now, people saying, how did they make that stupid decision? So that's the only thing I have to say. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Mr. George. All right, one last call before we close the public hearing. All right, everybody's jumping out of their seat. We'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Thank you very much. We appreciate you all being here and your comments. We are going to turn it over to the Planning Commission for further discussion and direction, questions, and all of that stuff. Mr. Allen.
I just had a question. I went through that financial analysis and looked pretty thorough, but did we do an analysis on the cost per individual? I don't know if it comes out. I mean, I just somebody said it wouldn't come out of the electric bill. That sounds not right. But did we do an analysis that said, okay, we increase your average bill in the town by X number of dollars, or if we took it out to a bond issue, so let's vary the whole thing, what that would cost individuals in the town?
The direction that our board gave us was that the Heber Planning Power Board directed us to build an overhead line, and if the individual entities chose to vary the line within their individual cities or jurisdictions, that those individual entities would pay the difference. We have not done a study on tax base because we have ratepayers, we don't have, Wasatch County covers a lot of ground. Heber City has a lot of taxpayers, and we have not done that because that's not up to us. That will be up to the city and the planning to decide if that's something that they would be interested in looking. We can get them the numbers of what the totals would be, as far as tax paying, how that would be done. Well, that's outside of my scope.
Okay, thank you.
Do you know how many miles are in the Heber City boundary? I saw that overall breakdown. But
You know what?
It's like 1.6.
1.6, is that what it was?
Yeah, 1 point is probably a little closer to 1.7, so.
1.7 miles within the city limits.
Mr. Wilson, I have a question for you. When you look at the cost, you're saying at 4 to 1. My question is, did you include O&M cost for the future? Can you make that comparison, or is that just installation cost?
That's a great question. That is just installation cost. O&M cost, once it is installed, would be passed along to ratepayers.
So I'm going to assume then, being familiar with public service or with infrastructure, that you're probably looking about the same. It's not as easy to go out and replace fuse. You're going to have, if you have a damaged conductor that's under the ground, you're going to have to pull that whole section of conductors out and replace it. Am I wrong?
I'm going to pass that to Ben because we don't have any underground cables that side.
Yeah, so there's several schools of thoughts, and in fact, in the NEI study that was performed, they actually go through some analysis on the pros and cons of each one. In fact, one of the pros of an underground line is that you end up with fewer disturbances due to, say, birds or weather, or tree in a line or something like that. One of the negatives, and we're talking about it now, is that when there is a failure, it's quite expensive, and if you don't have, even if you have the parts, it takes much, much longer than repairing an overhead line. If you don't have the parts, it can take literally months, because the conductor is very specific. In fact, a developer had paid to bury a line in another part of the state, and that section failed, and last I heard it was over 4 months in repairing that. So it is very costly, and it can take a long time. I don't want to say that there are no pros to it either, but I think that's kind of the balancing act when we look at it and say, do you want to fund something like this? We prefer overhead lines because they are repairable very quickly.
That's why I asked is, when I consider a project, that's one of the things I look at, the cost of installation, but I also look at the cost of operation forward over a period of time. How long do I expect the service life of this upgrade to be, and how much is it going to cost typically? Obviously, there are all kinds of factors that are very difficult to pin down, but typically, what would be the cost to operate that and install it over a period of 40 years or whatever that may be? And then how does that shake out typically at the end of that 40-year period? Just for lack of a better number, it could be 50 years, it could be 20 years, I don't know.
I can research that. To my understanding, that you're hitting on a point that may be an oversight in the state code specifically, because it covers the installation cost and the site, at least to my knowledge.
Sometimes those O&M costs are pretty.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're not so bad, but that usually doesn't turn out to be the case. Thank you.
Okay.
So with the study, that you're predicting your range that you're going to need capacity, was there any thought in today's new energy, solar and stuff like that? Is that a weighing factor into it to predict reduction, or is that even taken consideration?
The load flow study that we had done took into account solar installations, and it's a very up-to-date current study that was done by an independent third party that came in, and they did take those things into account as they looked at our rate of growth and the capacity needs which we have gotten.
And did it say that in the future, can they predict in the future, as far as
Yeah, nobody's very good at that, I've decided.
I understand that, but, you know, it is a factor. And, you know, today's society, we're starting to go that way, and that's the big talk.
Absolutely, and just at this point, the technology is advancing very rapidly, but at the same time, you know, batteries are not catching up yet, and we still have to provide for everyone. But the study did absolutely take into account home solar installation and different things like that.
Okay. Mr. Mumford, I had a question that maybe you can help with, besides these folks, but, you know, there's been some discussion about the placement of that power line on the east side of the proposed bypass route, and that's a difficult thing to get down because right now it's just a proposal on the bypass route. Where they have placed that on their map, does that still give the width, the right of way that would be needed for a bypass route, given where they placed that on the map?
That location, we do have a certain amount of property that's been dedicated to the city, or is going to. There's an additional width in the new development. At this point, since it's not designed or anything, they just assumed it would be on the east side. What impact it has on the development, the bypass, ultimately it would be desirable if the bypass was a little bit wider. Of course, that's not designed yet either. If the question is what impact will it have, it's another utility along that alignment, and it's hard to know because we already have certain constraints there from the development, from the property owner on the other side.
Yeah, so I don't know when we need another constraint. I mean, if we have poles there, then we are really limited to where that bypass road, the width that it could be.
Assuming that's where the bypass goes, which some of that property is already acquired along that alignment, there's a high probability that that's where it would go. It's a corridor, and it's a feasible corridor that it could go. There's a lot of unknowns until you get down the road, especially with the environmental study on the bypass, and it's coming out. So I guess it's as good a corridor as you can plan right now with what we know.
Okay. Thank you.
Tony, I have a question. Can we open up, it's called HPL Docs 2 for our materials?